In a small, sleepy town where everyone knew each other's business, there was a new face that caught people's attention almost immediately. She wasn't loud or flashy, in fact, she kept to herself most of the time, but something about her stood out. Maybe it was the way she carried herself, calm and confident, like she had seen more than just this little corner of the world. Or maybe it was how she moved with purpose, as if every step mattered. Whatever it was, the students at Crestwood High couldn't stop talking about her. She arrived in the middle of the semester, which was unusual enough to raise eyebrows. Transfers didn't happen often in a place like this. The teachers introduced her briefly on her first day, but she didn't say much beyond a quiet hi. Her family had moved because of her dad's job, or so the rumor went. Some kids whispered that she might have gotten into trouble at her old school, while others speculated she was some kind of prodigy athlete looking for better opportunities. No one really knew the truth, and she didn't seem interested in clearing things up. What made her even more intriguing was that she didn't try to fit in. Most newcomers would bend over backward to win over the popular crowd, but not her. During lunch breaks, she sat alone under a tree near the football field, reading books or sketching in a notebook. When classmates tried to strike up conversations, she answered politely but kept things short. It was clear she wasn't here to make friends or enemies, for that matter, but avoiding drama is easier said than done, especially in high school. Word got around quickly that she was good at sports. Really good. At track practice, she ran faster than anyone else, leaving seasoned sprinters eating her dust. In gym class, she excelled at whatever game they played, whether it was basketball, volleyball, or dodgeball. Coaches started noticing, too, praising her technique and focus. She didn't brag about it. She just did her thing, letting her skills speak for themselves. This didn't sit well with certain groups, though. High schools have their hierarchies, and Crestwood was no exception. There was a tight-knit clique of girls who ruled the social scene, led by a sharp-tongued senior known for her biting remarks and commanding presence. Let's call her the ringleader. She prided herself on being the center of attention and didn't take kindly to anyone threatening her spot. And to her, this new girl was starting to look like a threat. At first, the ringleader and her crew tested the waters. They invited her to sit with them during lunch, hoping she'd jump at the chance to join their inner circle. But when she politely declined, saying she preferred to finish her book, they bristled. How dare she turn them down? Who did she think she was? Things escalated from there. Subtle jabs turned into outright insults. Comments like, "Oh, I guess she thinks she's too cool for us," floated through the hallways. The ringleader's friends laughed along, reinforcing the idea that this new girl needed to be taught a lesson. After all, nobody ignored them without consequences. The tension simmered beneath the surface until one fateful day in gym class. That's when everything came to a head. Gym wasn't just about playing games. It was also a battleground for social dynamics. Cliques formed teams strategically, alliances shifted, and rivalries played out on the court. For the new girl, it was supposed to be another ordinary session. Little did she know, the ringleader and her crew had been plotting something big. As the class lined up for flag football, the air felt heavier than usual. Whispers rippled through the group, and sideways glances were exchanged. The new girl noticed but didn't let it show. She stayed focused, tying her shoelaces tightly and stretching her legs. If anything, she seemed more determined than ever to play her best. What she didn't realize was that this game wasn't going to be about scoring points. It was about sending a message, and that message was coming straight for her. The gym buzzed with energy as the students split into teams for flag football. The ringleader and her crew made sure to position themselves strategically, ensuring they'd have plenty of chances to accidentally bump into the new girl during the game. They exchanged smirks and subtle nods, their plan already in motion. To anyone watching, it probably looked like harmless pre-game banter, but the new girl could sense something was off. She wasn't sure what exactly, but years of reading body language told her this wasn't going to be a regular match. When the whistle blew, the game began. At first, everything seemed normal, or as normal as it could be, with a group of teenagers pretending to care about flag football. The new girl played her usual game, quick on her feet, alert, and always aware of her surroundings. But the ringleader's crew didn't waste time. Every time she reached for the ball, someone would shove her aside or block her path. If she managed to grab it, they'd swarm her, making it nearly impossible to pass or run. "Oops, sorry," one of them said mockingly after knocking her shoulder. Another laughed loudly, adding, "Guess you're just not fast enough." The comments kept coming, each one sharper than the last. The ringleader herself stayed close, sneering every chance she got. "You think you're so special, huh? Let's see how long you last." The new girl didn't respond. She clenched her jaw slightly but kept her focus on the game. Inside, though, she felt a flicker of frustration. It wasn't the insults that bothered her. It was the deliberate attempts to trip her up, to make her look clumsy or weak in front of everyone. She knew what they were doing, and she hated being underestimated. Still, she reminded herself to stay calm. Losing her cool wouldn't help. It would only give them exactly what they wanted. As the game went on, the tension grew thicker. The ringleader's crew became bolder, pushing harder and laughing louder. A few other students noticed but didn't say anything, either too scared to intervene or too entertained by the spectacle. Even the gym teacher, who usually kept a close eye on things, seemed distracted, chatting with another coach near the sidelines. It was clear no one was stepping in to stop this brewing storm. Then came the moment the ringleader had been waiting for. Near the end of the period, when most of the players were tired and less focused, she signaled her friends to move in. They surrounded the new girl near the bleachers, cutting off any possible escape routes. One of them grabbed her arm roughly, while another shoved her from behind. "What's wrong?" the ringleader taunted, stepping closer. Too scared to fight. Back? For a brief second, the new girl froze, not out of fear, but out of calculation. Her mind raced, analyzing the situation. She took note of the positions of her attackers, the distance between them, and the layout of the gym. Years of training kicked in automatically, sharpening her instincts. She exhaled slowly, steadying herself. Then, without warning, she moved. Reaction was lightning fast. When one of the girls lunged forward, the new girl sidestepped smoothly, using the attacker's momentum against her. With a swift twist, she redirected the force, sending the girl tumbling to the ground. Before anyone could react, she turned to the second attacker, who swung wildly at her face. Instead of flinching, she ducked under the punch and countered with a precise strike to the stomach. Leaving the girl gasping for air. The ringleader, realizing her plan was unraveling, tried to bolt. But the new girl wasn't done yet. In one fluid motion, she swept her leg across the floor, knocking the ringleader off balance. The fall was hard and loud, drawing gasps from the crowd. Within seconds, 3 members of the clique were sprawled on the gym floor, groaning in pain, while the new girl stood tall, completely composed. The room fell silent except for the sound of heavy breathing. Students stared in shock, unsure whether to cheer or run for cover. Some whispered excitedly, replaying the scene in their heads. Others backed away, suddenly realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Even the gym teacher snapped out of his conversation and rushed over, his whistle dangling uselessly from his neck. "What happened here?" he demanded, looking around at the chaos. No one answered right away. The ringleader struggled to sit up, clutching her side, while her friends whimpered nearby. The new girl simply crossed her arms, meeting the teacher's gaze with a steady expression. "I was defending myself," she said calmly. Her voice carried no anger, no triumph, just matter-of-fact clarity. Around her, the whispers grew louder. Some students nodded approvingly, impressed by her composure. Others looked uneasy, wondering if they'd misjudged her entirely. Either way, one thing was certain: the gym class would never forget what just happened, and as the teacher ushered everyone toward the locker rooms, the ringleader shot the new girl a glare filled with equal parts disbelief and resentment. For the first time, she realized she might have bitten off more than she could chew. By the time the gym teacher managed to restore some semblance of order, word about what had happened was already spreading like wildfire. Students who hadn't even been in the gym were piecing together the story from snippets overheard in the hallways. "Did you hear? She took them all down," one kid whispered excitedly to his friend. Another chimed in, "Yeah, and it wasn't just luck, she moved like a ninja or something." The details grew more dramatic with each retelling, but the core truth remained. The new girl had single-handedly dismantled the ringleader's crew without breaking a sweat. The aftermath of the incident played out in waves. First came the shock. For the rest of the day, students couldn't stop talking about it. In classrooms, during lunch breaks, even while lining up at water fountains, the conversation revolved around that moment in the gym. Videos surfaced almost instantly. Someone had secretly recorded the confrontation on their phone, capturing every twist, turn, and takedown. By the end of the school day, those clips had gone viral within Crestwood High, with students replaying them frame by frame, analyzing every move like sports commentators dissecting a championship game. But as the initial buzz settled, reality began to sink in for everyone involved. The ringleader and her two friends spent the rest of the afternoon nursing bruises and egos alike. One of them limped noticeably, wincing whenever she shifted her weight. Another clutched her stomach, muttering under her breath about how unfair the whole thing was. As for the ringleader herself, she avoided eye contact with anyone, keeping her head low as she shuffled between classes. Her usual strut was replaced by a defeated shuffle, and the confident smirk that once defined her presence was nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, the new girl acted like nothing unusual had happened. She went about her routine as if the events in the gym were just another Tuesday. During third period math, she sat quietly at the back of the class, scribbling notes without looking up once. At lunch, she returned to her usual spot under the tree near the football field, eating her sandwich while flipping through a book. If anything, she seemed calmer than before, as if she'd finally drawn a line in the sand and didn't need to worry about crossing it again. Of course, people noticed. Some approached her cautiously, half expecting her to snap into action at any moment. One boy mustered the courage to ask, "Hey, are you okay?" She looked up briefly, blinked, and replied with a simple, "Yeah, I'm fine." Her tone was so nonchalant that he walked away feeling both reassured and slightly confused. How could someone act so normal after doing something so extraordinary? As the hours passed, opinions started to divide. There were those who thought the new girl had gone too far. She could have seriously hurt them, one student argued in the cafeteria. Another chimed in, "I mean, yeah, they started it, but still, that was brutal." These voices were quieter, though, drowned out by the majority who sided with her. "They got exactly what they deserved," said a senior leaning against the lockers. "If you mess with fire, don't cry when you get burned." Even teachers found themselves caught in the debate. When the principal called the new girl into his office later that afternoon, the staff lounge buzzed with speculation. "Do you think she'll get suspended?" asked the art teacher, sipping her coffee nervously. The science teacher shrugged. "Hard to say. Technically, she was defending herself, but 3 kids ended up on the floor. That's not an easy call. In the principal's office, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. The new girl sat across from him, hands folded neatly in her lap, waiting patiently as he reviewed the reports filed by the gym teacher and several witnesses. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "Can you explain what happened?" "Today?" he asked, his voice measured but firm. She nodded, speaking slowly and clearly. "They cornered me during gym class. One of them grabbed my arm, another pushed me from behind, and the third kept taunting me. I didn't start anything, I just defended myself." Her explanation was concise, leaving no room for misinterpretation. When pressed for more details, she added, "I've trained in self-defense for years. My goal wasn't to hurt anyone, it was to stop them from hurting me." Witnesses backed up her version of events. Several students confirmed that the ringleaders group had initiated the confrontation, surrounding her aggressively. Even one of the attackers admitted reluctantly, "We tried to push her around, but we didn't expect her to fight back like that." The principal sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. This wasn't going to be a straightforward decision. Ultimately, the school decided to suspend the new girl for 2 days, not because she was entirely at fault, but because policy required consequences for physical altercations. It was a compromise meant to appease both sides, though many felt it was unfair. To the student body, the suspension felt less like punishment and more like recognition of her skill. As one junior put it bluntly, if anything, they should give her a medal. For the ringleader and her friends, the fallout was harder to swallow. Their reputations, once untouchable, now lay in shambles. Other students distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with bullies who had been publicly humiliated. Rumors swirled about how they'd planned the attack, painting them as petty and vindictive rather than powerful. The ringleader, in particular, struggled to regain her footing. She stopped strutting down the halls and avoided large groups, sticking to smaller circles where she might still command loyalty or at least pity. Yet, amidst all the drama, something unexpected began to emerge: respect. Not for the ringleader, whose authority had crumbled, but for the new girl. People admired her composure, her ability to stay calm under pressure, and her refusal to let others dictate her actions. She hadn't sought attention, yet she commanded it effortlessly. Slowly but surely, the tide was turning. Crestwood High was learning that strength isn't always loud, it can also be quiet, steady, and unshakable. And sometimes, being underestimated is the greatest advantage of all. The days following the gym incident brought a mix of tension and transformation to Crestwood High. The new girl's suspension might have seemed like a punishment, but to most students, it felt more like a badge of honor. 2 days away from school wasn't going to change her reputation. If anything, it only solidified her status as someone you didn't want to cross. Conversations in the hallway shifted from shock and awe to admiration. "She didn't even look scared," one student remarked during biology class. Another chimed in, "Yeah, she handled it like a pro. I'd never be able to stay that calm." While the new girl was absent, life at school carried on, but not without its share of awkwardness for the ringleader and her crew. Their injuries were minor, but their pride had taken a massive hit. The bruises healed quickly enough, but the sting of humiliation lingered. Every time they walked through the halls, whispers followed them. Some kids snickered behind their hands, while others openly stared, trying to figure out how someone who once commanded so much fear could now seem so diminished. The ringleader tried to brush it off, putting on her usual air of confidence, but cracks were starting to show. She no longer strutted down the corridors with her head held high. Instead, she kept her gaze fixed on the floor, avoiding eye contact with anyone who might dare to question what had happened. Her friends weren't faring much better. They huddled together between classes, whispering anxiously about how to reclaim their social standing. Yet, every attempt to rally support fell flat. Even their closest allies seemed reluctant to stand by them after seeing how easily they'd been taken down. Meanwhile, other students began to distance themselves, not just physically, but emotionally. It was as though the ringleader's power had been built on sand, and now the tide had washed it all away. A few brave souls started speaking up, sharing stories of times they'd been bullied or pressured into doing things they didn't want to do. One sophomore admitted, "I always thought she was untouchable, you know? Like, if you crossed her, your life would be over. But maybe she's just human, like the rest of us." These small acts of defiance signaled a subtle shift in the school's dynamic. For years, the ringleader's clique had ruled the roost, dictating who was popular and who got left out. Now, cracks were forming in that foundation. Students realized that standing up to bullies, even indirectly, could make a difference. And while no one was rushing to declare the new girl their leader, there was an unspoken acknowledgement that she had done something remarkable. She had stood her ground. When it mattered most, when the new girl returned to school after her suspension, everything felt different. People greeted her differently, not with fear, but with respect. Teachers nodded approvingly when she entered classrooms, and even the cafeteria staff gave her an extra scoop of mashed potatoes at lunch. She noticed these changes but didn't let them go to her head. If anything, she became quieter, almost retreating further into herself. Her quiet demeanor only added to the intrigue. Rumors swirled about her background. Was she some kind of martial arts prodigy? Had she trained with special forces? No one knew for sure, and she didn't offer any answers. When pressed, she simply shrugged and said, "I took self-defense. Classes because I wanted to feel safe, that's all." To her, it wasn't about being a hero or proving a point. It was about survival and maybe, just maybe, showing others that they didn't have to tolerate mistreatment either. As the weeks passed, the ringleader struggled to find her footing. Her attempts to regain control were met with indifference or outright resistance. During group projects, classmates paired off without including her, leaving her isolated at tables meant for four. At pep rallies, her cheers went unanswered, drowned out by louder voices cheering for the athletes. Even her signature smirk lost its edge, replaced by a forced grin that didn't reach her eyes. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. The ringleader approached the new girl near the lockers after school. The hallway was mostly empty, save for a few stragglers packing up their bags. Her hands trembled slightly as she fidgeted with the strap of her backpack, unsure how to begin. Finally, she blurted out, "Look, I'm sorry, okay? We shouldn't have done that to you." It was a moment that stopped everyone in their tracks. Students paused mid-step, books clutched to their chests, watching the scene unfold. The ringleader rarely apologized for anything, let alone admitted fault publicly. Her voice wavered, betraying a vulnerability she usually kept hidden. For the first time, she looked genuinely remorseful. The new girl turned to face her, her expression unreadable. She studied the ringleader for a long moment, as if weighing the sincerity of the apology. Then, in a voice so calm it almost sounded rehearsed, she replied, "Apology accepted." There was no triumph in her tone, no gloating or condescension, just a simple acknowledgement, delivered with the same quiet confidence she'd shown since day one. The ringleader blinked, clearly surprised by the lack of drama. She opened her mouth to say more, then closed it again, nodding awkwardly before hurrying away. The hallway buzzed with chatter as students processed what they'd just witnessed. Was this the start of a truce? Or just a fleeting moment of civility? For the new girl, the apology changed little. She continued attending classes, excelling in sports, and keeping to herself outside of school hours. But for the ringleader, it marked the beginning of a long road toward redemption. Losing her grip on power had forced her to confront parts of herself she'd rather ignore, the cruelty masked as confidence, the manipulation disguised as leadership. She wasn't forgiven overnight, nor did she expect to be. But she had taken the first step toward becoming someone worth respecting, and as the semester rolled on, Crestwood High began to transform in small but meaningful ways. Cliques loosened their hold, friendships formed across unlikely divides, and students found courage to speak up when they saw injustice. None of it happened overnight, and none of it was perfect, but it was progress. All because one person had chosen to stand her ground, proving that strength doesn't always come from loud declarations or flashy displays. Sometimes it comes from knowing who you are and refusing to let anyone take that away from you. As the weeks turned into months, life at Crestwood High settled into a new rhythm. The dust from the gym incident had finally settled, but its impact lingered in ways that no one could have predicted. For the new girl, things were quieter now, almost too quiet. Rumors still swirled about her, but they weren't mean-spirited anymore. Instead, they carried a sense of admiration, like whispers about a superhero who had saved the day without asking for thanks. She didn't mind the attention, or lack thereof. She just kept doing what she always did, staying focused, working hard, and keeping to herself. But even she couldn't ignore the subtle changes around her. People treated her differently, not with fear, but with respect. In class, students sat closer to her, eager to be near someone who exuded such calm confidence. During track practice, teammates looked to her for guidance, trusting her judgment when it came to strategy and technique. Even teachers seemed to soften their tone when speaking to her, as if acknowledging that she was someone special, not because she sought recognition, but because she earned it. For the ringleader, though, the journey was far from over. That apology in the hallway hadn't magically fixed everything. It was just the start of a long process of rebuilding trust, not just from others, but within herself. At first, she struggled to adjust to her diminished status. Her once loyal followers had scattered, some joining other cliques, others finding solace in smaller groups where they felt safer. Without her entourage, the ringleader realized how lonely power could be. For years, she'd relied on intimidation to keep people in line, never stopping to consider whether they genuinely liked her or simply feared her. That realization hit her hardest during lunch one day. Sitting alone at a table in the corner of the cafeteria, she watched as laughter erupted at nearby tables. Friends shared inside jokes, passed snacks back and forth, and leaned in close to listen to each other's stories. She envied them, not because they were happy, but because they were real. Their connections weren't built on fear or manipulation. They were authentic, something she'd never truly experienced. Determined to change, the ringleader began making small efforts to reconnect with people. She started by apologizing to those she'd wronged in the past, not with grand gestures but with heartfelt words. "I'm sorry I was so rude to you last year," she told one classmate after English class. "I shouldn't have treated you like that." The classmate hesitated, clearly surprised, before nodding and saying, "Thanks for saying that." It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it was a start. She also tried to step outside her comfort zone, joining clubs and activities she'd previously dismissed as beneath her. At first, it was awkward. She didn't know how to act around people who didn't fawn over her or cater to her every whim. But slowly, she learned to listen more than she spoke, to laugh at jokes instead of forcing others to laugh at hers. Over time, she discovered that being vulnerable wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. And while she wasn't suddenly beloved, she was no longer feared either. That, she decided, Was progress. The transformation at Crestwood High wasn't limited to just 2 people, it rippled through the entire school. Students who had once tiptoed around the ringleader's clique found their voices, standing up for themselves in ways they never had before. One boy, who had been teased relentlessly for his love of poetry, proudly read one of his pieces aloud during a school assembly. Another student organized a campaign to include underclassmen in senior-led events, arguing that everyone deserved a chance to shine. These acts of courage inspired others to follow suit, creating a culture of kindness that replaced the old hierarchy of fear. Even the teachers noticed the shift. Class discussions became livelier, with more students willing to share their thoughts without worrying about ridicule. Sports teams practiced harder, fueled by a renewed sense of camaraderie rather than competition. Even the lunchroom felt warmer, as unlikely friendships formed across grade levels and social circles. Crestwood High wasn't perfect. There were still arguments, misunderstandings, and moments of tension, but it was better, kinder, stronger. For the new girl, watching these changes unfold was both satisfying and humbling. She hadn't set out to be a catalyst for change. She'd simply wanted to survive high school without losing herself in the process. Yet, here she was, surrounded by proof that standing your ground can inspire others to do the same. She didn't need applause or validation. It was enough to know that she had made a difference. However small. By the end of the school year, the gym incident felt like a distant memory. The ringleader and her former crew were no longer the untouchable rulers of Crestwood High. They were just students navigating the same challenges as everyone else. Some days were easier than others, but they were learning to grow beyond their mistakes. As for the new girl, she remained a quiet force, leading not by commanding attention but by setting an example. Her presence reminded everyone that true strength isn't about dominating others, it's about knowing when to stand firm and when to let go. When graduation rolled around, the senior class gathered on the football field for one final celebration. Speeches were given, caps were tossed into the air, and tears were shed as friends promised to stay in touch. Amidst the chaos, the new girl stood off to the side, observing the scene with a faint smile. She wasn't the valedictorian or the star athlete, but she didn't need titles to leave a lasting impression. She had shown Crestwood High that resilience, integrity, and quiet confidence could spark a chain reaction of positive change. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the field, she slipped away unnoticed. There were no goodbyes, no dramatic farewells, just the sound of her footsteps fading into the distance. Somewhere deep down, she knew that Crestwood High would remember her not for what she said, but for what she did. And that was more than enough.